How did Edmund Burke feel about the French Revolution? Edmund Burke, an Anglo-Irish statesman, political theorist, and philosopher, expressed a strongly negative view of the French Revolution. His criticisms were outlined in his famous work, Reflections on the Revolution in France, published in 1790. Burke's opposition to the French Revolution can be summarized through several key reasons. Edmund Burke's opposition to radical change was deeply rooted in his conservative philosophy, which emphasized the importance of tradition, stability, and incremental reform. Burke was a staunch critic of the French Revolution, and his ideas continued to influence political thought and debates on the merits of gradual versus radical change. One key aspect of Burke's philosophy was his belief in the value of practical experience and historical precedent. He argued that societies should evolve organically, drawing on the accumulated wisdom of the past. For Burke, tradition served as a repository of collective knowledge and a guide for navigating societal challenges. In contrast, he viewed radical attempts to reshape society based on abstract principles, such as the French revolutionaries' focus on natural rights, as misguided and perilous. Burke was wary of the revolutionary zeal that sought to dismantle existing institutions in favor of abstract ideals. He believed that institutions were the product of centuries of trial and error, reflecting the accumulated wisdom of generations. Radical change, in his view, risked undermining the delicate balance and unintended consequences of societal structures. Burke argued that the revolutionaries' approach, driven by a desire to construct a new social order from scratch, would lead to chaos and suffering. The concept of gradual reform was central to Burke's political thought. He advocated for a cautious and pragmatic approach to change, wherein alterations to existing structures were made with careful consideration of their potential repercussions. Burke understood that societies were dynamic and needed to adapt to changing circumstances, but he insisted on an approach that respected the complexity of human societies and the delicate interplay of their various elements. In essence, Burke's opposition to radical change was rooted in a deep appreciation for the organic development of societies over time. He cautioned against the hubris of those who believed they could design an ideal society based solely on abstract principles. Instead, Burke championed a measured approach to reform that respected the accumulated wisdom of tradition and sought to address specific issues without jeopardizing the stability and continuity of established institutions. His ideas continue to shape discussions on the role of tradition, stability, and pragmatism in the face of societal challenges. Edmund Burke's distrust of abstract reasoning in political matters was a central tenet of his philosophy. He believed that relying on vague and abstract concepts, such as liberty and equality, without grounding them in practical considerations and a deep understanding of history, could lead to dangerous and unpredictable consequences. Burke argued that abstract ideas like liberty and equality were highly subjective and prone to various interpretations. Different individuals or groups could define these concepts in ways that suited their particular interests or ideologies, often leading to conflicting interpretations and disputes. This lack of concrete definition, in Burke's view, made these abstract principles unreliable guides for political action. Moreover, Burke expressed concern that the manipulation of abstract ideals could be used to justify extreme actions, including violence and tyranny. He observed that in the pursuit of lofty ideals, individuals and movements might resort to drastic measures, rationalizing their actions as necessary for the attainment of abstract goals. This, in Burke's eyes, was a perilous path that could result in the erosion of established institutions and the imposition of arbitrary authority. Instead of relying on abstract reasoning, Burke advocated for a more grounded and practical approach to political decision-making. He emphasized the importance of understanding the specific historical and cultural context in which political issues arose. Burke believed that political leaders should base their decisions on a deep knowledge of the traditions, customs, and institutions that had evolved over time, rather than being guided solely by abstract principles detached from the complexities of reality. For Burke, tradition and historical experience provided a more reliable guide for political action. He argued that the accumulated wisdom of generations, embedded in the traditions of a society, offered a stable and time-tested foundation for making decisions that would have practical and lasting benefits. In this way, Burke sought to avoid the pitfalls of abstract reasoning by grounding political decisions in the tangible and well-established elements of a society's history and tradition. Burke's distrust of abstract reasoning in politics was rooted in his concern that vague and subjective concepts could be easily manipulated and misinterpreted. He believed that relying on practical considerations and a deep understanding of history and tradition was essential for responsible and effective political governance, guarding against the potential dangers of unchecked idealism. Edmund Burke's defense of tradition and institutions was a cornerstone of his conservative philosophy, particularly in the context of his critique of the French Revolution. Burke argued that the institutions that had developed over time were essential for maintaining stability, order, and the overall well-being of society. His opposition to the radical changes advocated by the French revolutionaries stemmed from his belief that the sudden dismantling of established institutions would result in chaos and anarchy. Burke valued tradition as a repository of collective wisdom and experience, viewing it as a guide that the trials and errors of previous generations had shaped. He understood that traditions were not static, but evolved gradually, incorporating past lessons while adapting to changing circumstances. According to Burke, this organic development ensured continuity and coherence in societal structures. In defending institutions like the monarchy, the church, and the aristocracy, Burke acknowledged that these entities were not without their flaws. However, he contended that they played a crucial role in providing a framework for social order. Burke saw these institutions as pillars that contributed to the maintenance of stability, offering a sense of continuity and identity to the people. He believed that a gradual reform of these institutions, rather than their wholesale destruction, was the prudent approach to address societal issues. The French Revolution, in Burke's eyes, represented a radical departure from this gradual and pragmatic approach. The revolutionaries, driven by abstract principles and a desire for a complete overhaul of the existing order, targeted traditional institutions as symbols of oppression. Burke argued that such an assault on the foundations of French society would lead to a power vacuum, societal breakdown, and, ultimately, anarchy. Furthermore, Burke contended that the French revolutionaries underestimated the complexity of societal structures and the role institutions played in maintaining social cohesion. He believed that the abrupt removal of these institutions would create a void that abstract principles could not easily fill. Burke feared that the destruction of established authorities would result in a loss of social order, leaving the French people vulnerable to the uncertainties of a society without well-defined structures. While acknowledging the imperfections of existing institutions, he argued for their gradual reform rather than radical upheaval. Burke believed that a measured approach to change, respecting the organic evolution of traditions and institutions, was essential to avoid the perils of anarchy and societal disintegration. Edmund Burke's fear of bloodshed and violence during the French Revolution, particularly the infamous Reign of Terror, was a significant aspect of his critique of revolutionary ideals. Burke was deeply disturbed by the brutality and chaos that unfolded as radical factions seized control in France. He believed that the revolutionaries' willingness to resort to extreme measures, including mass executions and violence, revealed a dangerous disregard for the stability and well-being of the nation. The Reign of Terror, which took place from 1793 to 1794, was marked by a wave of political purges, mass executions, and widespread violence. The Committee of Public Safety, led by figures like Maximilien Robespierre, wielded extraordinary power and campaigned against perceived enemies of the revolution. The guillotine became a symbol of the revolutionary government's brutal repression. Burke saw the Reign of Terror as a manifestation of the radicalism he had warned against. In their pursuit of abstract ideals, he believed that the revolutionaries had abandoned the principles of justice, order, and humanity. In Burke's view, the use of violence to suppress dissent and eliminate perceived enemies undermined the very foundations of a just and stable society. Moreover, Burke predicted that the violent methods employed during the Revolution would have lasting consequences for France. He argued that the destruction of social order and the embrace of brutality as a means of achieving political goals would leave a legacy of trauma and resentment. Burke feared that the revolutionaries' actions would create a cycle of violence long after the revolutionary fervor had subsided. Burke's concern for the human cost of the revolution went beyond political analysis. It reflected his deep moral convictions. He believed that the ends did not justify the means, and that the use of violence to achieve political objectives would inevitably lead to moral degradation and societal decay. Burke's fear of bloodshed and violence during the French Revolution was rooted in his moral and practical objections to the extreme measures taken by the revolutionaries. He foresaw the devastating consequences of the Reign of Terror, both in terms of immediate suffering and the long-term impact on the social fabric of France. This aspect of Burke's critique underscores his emphasis on the importance of order, justice, and humanity in pursuing political change. Reflections on the Revolution in France, published in 1790, stands as Edmund Burke's seminal work on the French Revolution. This influential and eloquent essay not only became a rallying point for opponents of the revolution, but also continues to be a significant text in the realm of political thought. In Reflections, Burke articulated his concerns and criticisms of the revolutionary events unfolding in France, offering a profound and passionate defense of tradition, stability, and the importance of gradual reform. The work is characterized by Burke's eloquent prose, keen insights into human nature, and a profound understanding of political philosophy. One of Burke's central arguments in the Reflections is his rejection of the notion that societies can be reconstructed according to abstract principles. He criticized the French revolutionaries for attempting to dismantle long-standing institutions and traditions in pursuit of a new social order based on what he saw as impractical and untested ideas. Instead, Burke emphasized the importance of incremental change rooted in the accumulated wisdom of history and tradition. Despite the enduring significance of Reflections on the Revolution in France, Burke faced considerable criticism during his time. Some contemporaries accused him of being out of touch with the changing tides of the modern world, arguing that he was clinging to obsolete ideas. Burke's emphasis on tradition and gradual reform clashed with the revolutionary fervor of the time, making him a target for those who sought more radical transformations. Moreover, critics contended that Burke's opposition to the revolution was driven by self-interest and a desire to preserve the privileges of the ruling class. Some saw his defense of traditional institutions like the monarchy and the aristocracy as an attempt to safeguard the existing social hierarchy. Despite these criticisms, Burke's work endures as a thought-provoking and relevant exploration of the complexities of political change. The questions he raised about the balance between tradition and innovation, the dangers of radical ideologies, and the practical challenges of implementing sweeping societal transformations continue to resonate in contemporary political discourse. In the face of evolving political landscapes and ongoing debates about the nature of governance, Burke's Reflections on the Revolution in France serves as a reminder of the enduring tension between the desire for change and the need for stability, and the cautionary tale of the potential pitfalls of pursuing utopian ideals without due consideration for historical context and practical consequences. Thank you for following up till the end. Now, here is a question for you. How accurate was Burke's prediction of the chaos and suffering that would befall France due to the revolution? Please tell us where you are watching from.